If you marry that man, forget that you ever had a mother. I will disown you. Then maybe it's time I stop living my life just to keep you happy. Excuse me? I've spent 28 years letting you choose. But I'm tired, Mommy. I don't want you controlling my life. So you're choosing that man over me? No, Mommy. I'm choosing myself.
But how did a daughter, who had always obeyed her mother, get to the point where she was willing to walk away from her? Well, this didn't happen overnight. For 28 years, Claire had been living under her mother's control. Her mother, Margaret, loved her children deeply. At least, that's what she believed. But Margaret had a serious problem. She couldn't let her children make decisions without her. She chose what they wore. She questioned where they went. She wanted to know who they spoke to. And when it came to relationships, Margaret believed that she had the final say. Her son Daniel was already married to Rachel. And even though Daniel had his own home, Margaret behaved as if she still ran his marriage. If Rachel bought something Margaret didn't like, she complained. If Daniel and Rachel made plans without telling her, she became angry. And whenever Rachel tried to set a boundary, Margaret would tell her, "You're the one who married into this family, so don't tell me how to run it." Daniel hated conflict, so he usually stayed quiet, and that silence only made things worse. But Claire had watched everything. She knew exactly what her mother was capable of. So when she turned 28 and remained unmarried, Margaret became even more involved in her love life, and honestly, it was almost unbelievable. Whenever a man showed interest in Claire, Margaret investigated him like a police officer. One man wasn't rich enough, another wasn't educated enough, another came from a family Margaret didn't like. And every time Claire protested, her mother had the same response: "I am only trying to protect you." Claire eventually stopped arguing until she met Michael. Michael was different. He didn't have a wealthy family. He didn't try to impress Margaret, but he treated Claire with respect. He listened to her. He supported her dreams, and most importantly, he made her happy. Claire knew her mother wouldn't approve, so she kept the relationship secret. For months, they dated quietly. Then one evening, Michael proposed, and Claire said yes. She knew she couldn't hide it forever, so she finally decided to tell her mother. She walked into the sitting room and said, "Mom, there's someone I want you to meet." Margaret immediately became suspicious. "Who?" she said. "His name is Michael." And when Claire explained that Michael wanted to marry her, Margaret exploded. She demanded that Claire end the relationship immediately. Claire refused. Margaret became even angrier, and that was when she gave Claire the ultimatum that changed everything. "If you marry that man, forget you ever had a mother. I will disown you."
If you marry that man, forget that you ever had a mother. I will disown you. Then maybe it's time I stop living my life just to keep you happy. Excuse me? I've spent 28 years letting you choose. But I'm tired, Mommy. I don't want you controlling my life. So you're choosing that man over me? No, Mommy. I'm choosing myself.
Claire finally told her mother everything she had been holding inside. She wasn't choosing Michael over her mother. She was choosing to stop allowing someone else to live her life for her. And when Margaret realized Claire wasn't going to back down, she made one final mistake. She told Claire to leave the house, so Claire did exactly that. She packed the suitcase, walked past her mother and left. Margaret watched her go. She genuinely believed Claire would return within a few days. She was wrong. Claire rented a small apartment and began building a life of her own. It wasn't easy. There were nights she cried. There were moments she wanted to go home, but she kept going. Michael stayed beside her and eventually they got married. Margaret wasn't invited, or rather, she was invited. She simply refused to come. She told everyone, if she wants to live without her mother, let her be. But secretly, Margaret was heartbroken. Then, while Claire was building her new life, Daniel's marriage began falling apart. Rachel had finally reached her limit, and after another argument caused by Margaret's interference, Rachel looked at Daniel and said, "Your mother doesn't have to choose our life for us, but you have to decide whether you are going to be my husband or remain her little boy." That sentence hit Daniel hard. For the first time, he realized that his mother's constant interference wasn't protecting his marriage, it was destroying it. Daniel confronted his mother, and for the first time he told her, "Mom, you have to let us live our own lives." Margaret was furious, but later that night, sitting alone in her room, she started thinking about Claire, and then she remembered her own childhood. Her mother had controlled her too. Every decision, every relationship, every important part of her life. Margaret had spent years telling herself she would never become like her mother. Yet somehow, she had become exactly the same. That realization broke her. A few days later, Margaret went to Claire's house, and Claire opened the door. Neither of them spoke. Margaret simply looked at her daughter and began to cry. "I'm sorry." Those were the words Claire had waited years to hear. Margaret admitted that she had mistaken control for love. She admitted that she had been so afraid her children would make mistakes that she forgot they were adults with lives of their own. And finally, she begged her daughter for forgiveness. Claire cried too. She could have turned her mother away, but instead she hugged her. It wasn't an instant fix. There were still wounds. There were still boundaries that Margaret had learned to respect. But slowly, things changed. Margaret apologized to Rachel. She stopped interfering in Daniel's marriage. And she finally understood that being a mother doesn't mean owning her children's lives. Sometimes, loving your children means knowing when to step back. Because you can guide them, you can advise them, you can warn them, but you cannot live their lives for them. And if you try, you might end up losing the very people you were trying so desperately to protect.